All right, well, my editing skills are crap. Did I turn that? Oh, yeah, I gotta do this. But can the same be said about Justice League? Stick around and find out. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. I actually don't know the rest of that one, but I couldn't remember. What's the one for the animated series? Bum, ba, 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 ba. That's a little too slow, though. Bum, ba, 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 ba. You would lose interest if I did that. It's too slow, too grand and slow. You would lose interest. We got to keep it fast for the kiddies, which was maybe the philosophy guiding the editing of this film. Anyway, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Justice League. The synopsis on IMDb reads, fueled by his restored faith in humanity and inspired by Superman's selfless act, Bruce Wayne enlists the help of his newfound ally, Diana Prince, to face an even greater enemy. And there's really not much more to the plot than that. The movie is largely about establishing a new threat, big bad bad guy, and Batman is recruiting and assembling team members to stop the threat of the big bad guy. That's really the plot. That's kind of the whole plot. It's filled out a little by introducing characters and their backstories enough to create motivations for them to join or not join up with Batman. Since I rarely find stories in fiction interesting, but rather depend on characters to stay invested in a piece of fiction, then I'm glad that they included what character presentation and development that they did. But it still felt too rushed and crammed to me. Now, reportedly, late in the game, I mean, some of you may already know that Zack Snyder was brought in, or Joss Whedon, who wrote and directed, I think, both of the Avengers movies. I know he directed both of them, the first two. Has there been a third one? Oh, never mind. I think he was involved in the scripting too. Anyway, they brought him in, reportedly after Zack Snyder presented his first cut, and the executives were like, we gotta joke this the crap up. So Joss Whedon was brought in to write some jokes and stuff, and then Zack Snyder shot those kind of after the main shoot. And then during post-production, Zack Snyder just had a tragedy in his life, and so he stepped away from the movie, and they brought on Joss Whedon to edit the rest of the movie and finish it up. So you can imagine me going to the theater and thinking, what is this thing gonna feel like? What is the edit being done, presumably by Joss Whedon? What is it going to prioritize? What's going to hit the cutting room floor? Even if he's trying his best, which I don't know, maybe he is or was, to create a Zack Snyder movie and make decisions in line with what he thinks Zack Snyder would do. At the end of the day, it's another guy doing it. So what is this experience going to be? And then also, even later in the game, a Warner Brothers executive reportedly mandated that the movie be no more than 2 hours long. All previous DC movies have been over 2 hours, with some of them, I think, coming in at like 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2.5 hours. So I think a lot of them have been significantly over that 2 hour mark. And some character moments from the trailers did not appear in this cut of Justice League. So it seems, my impression is that character focus may have been what they sacrificed to reduce that runtime and get it down to 120 minutes. The villain Steppenwolf, who in the comics is a servant of big bad DC villain Darkseid, this cosmic villain, who was around before Thanos, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, blah blah blah. I won't get on that. I don't need to add fuel to that fire. Anyway, Steppenwolf is the servant of the big bad Darkseid of the DC universe, and but in this movie, Steppenwolf is mostly just a force of destruction and dominance. His connection to Darkseid is very thin. I think Darkseid, the name is mentioned once, with no explanation of who he is, or no mention of the planet Apocalypse. I don't think he was just like this force from out of nowhere that came, and he's just come. He's been here in the past. He's here again to wreak havoc and dominate and da 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 da. But there was just no as far as like the motive and substance of who that character is and what makes him tick. There was just like it was empty. It was empty, and so he felt like just a force of destruction, and rather than a character. just a threat, just a plot device. Even as a threat, though, I didn't find him that threatening to the heroes or the world, certainly compared to previous DC Zack Snyder movies, and even compared to, the non-Zack Snyder, the Wonder Woman movie, and maybe I can't remember my thoughts on Suicide Squad. That's the one DC movie I've had mixed feelings about. I really have enjoyed Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and Wonder Woman, just to give you a frame of reference. There was one poor Russian family that they kept cutting to and showing us the trouble that they were having because of all the horrible stuff that Steppenwolf was doing in the world. But that was about it, I felt like. I don't remember them cutting to show like a larger scale amount of destruction and worry and terror that people were experiencing. I just don't remember. Is my microphone on? Oh, good, it is. Uncut. I just didn't feel the sense of threat, Now, briefly at the beginning, there are signs of hopelessness in the world because of the death of Superman. We're still in the fallout of that in this story. But after that, it's mostly just talk, where I prefer show, don't tell. Show me that the world feels hopeless instead of just saying the world has no hope, And I felt like largely what they were doing is Batman saying, there's no hope without Superman. Or when people saying, yeah, the world is in a place of not having hope. And so I heard people talking about the world being without hope, but I wanted to see it more because just seeing that without people just blah, blah talking about it, that's what's going to, I think, make me feel it more. For my taste, I'd enjoy this whole movie a lot more if it was just allowed to breathe a bit more. So many moments just didn't matter to me when they could have, if they had spent a little more time establishing a sense of danger or defeat. There are 3 major moments in this movie I can think of. I won't give details. And each of them I wanted to feel so much more powerful and gratifying to see good triumph in the midst of these hopeless, what should have felt like hopeless circumstances. But instead, victory just felt too easily won, with very little price being paid that I could see to bring it about, especially compared to the prices that have had to be paid in previous DC movies. The movie definitely has more jokes, many that come from Ezra Miller as the Flash, but they're peppered, throughout all the characters. The jokes, especially of Ezra Miller's Flash, were hit or miss for me, but I still got more faint chuckles out of this flick than most superhero movies I've watched that go for laughs. So at least there was that, but I am not a good judge of what you're likely to find funny. So, I mean, you give that whatever weight you think it's worth, which is probably nothing. Despite what felt like a crunched edit to me, I still brought with me the dramatic weight of what I felt watching Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman and Wonder Woman. So when there was emotional payoff and resolution for characters in these movies, I legitimately felt something. I just wanted to sit in those feelings a bit longer. My hope is that we'll get an extended cut that will bring more of these kinds of things back into the movie, assuming they do exist on a cutting room floor somewhere. But that may not happen if Zack Snyder is still taking time away from work in light of the family tragedy that took him away from finishing the movie in the first place. As it stands, I enjoyed this movie and its connection to the other DC movies enough that I'll definitely buy it, even if an extended cut is not made available. I just didn't feel the epic weight in Justice League that I felt in those other movies that I mentioned. Because for me, epic is not just about bigger explosions and a larger scale, it's about dramatic weight and significance. And in that realm, this movie was a step back for me. Now, talking about the cast a little bit, the returning cast all did a fine job, although Ben Affleck, oh my gosh, there's someone doing yard machine blowing outside, but it's uncut. I'm gonna keep going. The returning cast all did a fine job as far as I'm concerned, although Ben Affleck felt more like Ben Affleck than Bruce Wayne to me when he was out of the mask, probably due to having more jokes in his dialogue. Henry Cavill also felt a little artificial and less human to me when he wasn't in scenes involving Clark's loved ones. He felt a bit to me like the 1950s Father I Never Had, which I think some Superman fans may like. That is a legitimate take from the history of Superman, that you can take that character in. He also cracks a couple of one-liners that just didn't seem to fit with his personality that was established in previous movies. Again, in superhero movie action, I prefer show, don't tell. I don't want your wisecracks in combat to diffuse the tension, especially if you don't give me enough time to feel any tension at all in the build-up. Now, that said, much of Cavill's Superman still felt consistent enough to me, consistent enough with previous movies for me to buy into it a little more often than not. I like this new take on Aquaman from Jason Momoa. It feels like a wild member of some heavy metal band, that's the king of the seas. Well, I don't think he's king yet. I'm not sure. There's not a lot of background information they give, just enough to kind of give you a sense of how he feels about life and his place in the world. And Jason Momoa felt like a great fit for this take on Aquaman, so I have no complaints about his performance. Ezra Miller felt okay as Barry Allen / Flash, but maybe just slightly overdone for my tastes in the way he expresses himself, and the humor and his quirkiness. I wish it would have been a little more subtle and a little less frequent. My guess is that many people will really like him, though. I'll hold out my final opinion on that casting and kind of the direction that they're doing with him and that performance until, like, say, maybe a Flash solo movie where we really get a broader sense of just, who this character is. Okay, so there's lots of CG in this movie. The villain is CG. Cyborg is mostly CG. The environment in the climax and other places is CG. These days, CG is just something I've had to accept. Bad CG doesn't make the movie significantly worse for me because, to my cursed eyes, even the best CG often still stands out like a sore thumb, just looking, reminding me of like a highly detailed cartoon, So for me, even though some people might say, oh, well, this CG was good or that CG was bad, totally took me out of it. For me, almost all CG, I just have to kind of like shrug and accept because it sticks out really strongly to me. The dramatic weight connected to the CG makes it less visible to me, however. And since this movie lacked a lot of that dramatic weight for me, there was a lot more of me just having to shrug and accept what I was seeing than I felt I had to do in, say, Batman versus Superman. I don't always talk about the music. I want to talk about the score briefly. Danny Elfman does the score for this, and I can't remember if he's done the score to any previous DC movies. I'm not sure, but anyway, what I noticed him in his I noticed him in the opening credits, his name in the opening credits, and maybe that made the music stand out a little bit more to me. I don't know, but it was interesting. He subtly brings back the old Michael Keaton Batman theme, which I thought was really interesting. At first, I didn't quite catch it because it's often buried by slight melodic modification, half representation, or just kind of like the chaos of various sound effects and action going on. But it's there, and it's there repeatedly. They even that was confirmed when in the closing credits they even credit that theme specifically. I love Elfman's early film work, but it felt a little too melodramatic for me in this movie at times, as though the score felt the need to tell me how to feel in a given moment, like an exaggerated version of what I was feeling, much more exaggerated than what I was actually feeling, but just to kind of illustrate a little bit, imagine watching a drama and it's kind of a sad moment, and then you hear this opera singer come in, or some guy, this is very sad now, it's just like, okay, I know, now you're totally taking me out of it, So there were times where just kind of like some subtle or less than subtle choices in Elfman's score actually resulted in hindering my emotional connection to the movie a number of times. Okay, so when I take in a movie or any kind of like a geek entertainment or whatever, I try to ask myself, is there anything of worthwhile moral, philosophical, or spiritual or theological significance, anything like that going on here that might stimulate worthwhile thought or conversation? I don't know, probably only maybe in kind of like a meta type sense for me as I watch this movie and kind of reflect back on it. It seems like the movie wants its theme to be hope. The word appears peppered throughout the script. The final voiceover of the movie, provided by Lois Lane, almost feels like an apology for the darkness of previous films and a promise that these movies will be more hopeful from now on. But for me, I need to feel hopelessness in a story before hope has any dramatic power. And a sense of hopelessness barely registered for me while I was watching this movie. That said, as someone reminded me today, there is a lot of unhappiness outside of the theater that a lot of people are experiencing. I've considered this before and even suggested a theory a little while back on the Christian Geek Central forums, suggesting that those who are currently experiencing difficulties or pain in life, or who have experienced those things intensely in the past, bring plenty of their own feelings of hopelessness with them through their daily routine. And so when they go to entertainment, they're ready to get to the positive outcome in fiction much more quickly, rather than sitting through a heavy setup to that victory. You know, they're ready for the payoff when they sit down to watch the movie. They don't need the time spent in the grim tension and the weight of hopelessness in order to be ready for and to feel that victory. So, and I would say that so far, at least anecdotally, there seems to be at least some validity to my theory as I think about individuals I know personally, their struggles, their troubles, and their feelings about Zack Snyder's DC movies compared to, say, the Marvel movies. And although I don't bring a history of pain into the theater with me, I think I can agree with those who do that it is good to see movies trying to highlight the value of hope, even if they themselves can't give us real hope at the end of the day. All right, well, I have no idea what your tastes in movies are, but if I were a time traveler, I would go back in time and say, Peter, actually, dude, skip this one for now. Wait, Redbox it. It's not going to be the movie that you wanted, but you're invested enough in these characters that you're going to get something out of it. And so you'll probably want to add it to your collection. And who knows, maybe when it reaches home video, you'll have the option of an extended cut that will give you what this cut was lacking for you. It's rated PG-13 for sequences of sci-fi, violence, and action. All right, those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please consider supporting this channel by becoming a Spirit Blade Insider, which grants you exclusive monthly behind-the-scenes content. For more info, visit our About page at spiritblade.com, where you'll also find our audio dramas and our weekly podcast. Please do like, share, and subscribe if you like this video, want to share it, and want more videos like it. Finally, there's a ton more content and community over at christiangeekcentral.com, so I hope you'll join us over there soon as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.